There's a special, blistering circle of hell reserved for people who mess with a man's parking spot. You know the type. The people who view the white-painted lines on the asphalt not as boundaries, but as mere suggestions, interpretive art for their four-wheeled ego trips. But here's the thing about the world we live in. You never truly know who you're messing with. You look at a guy in a faded hoodie driving a 3-year-old Ford F-150, and you think, I can walk all over him. You think, he's a nobody. What you don't realize, and what one particularly entitled woman was about to find out the hard way, is that sometimes the guy in the hoodie holds the keys to your entire world, or, at the very least, the keys to the tow truck that's about to drag your pride and joy to the other side of the county. My name is Mike, and to my neighbors at the Sapphire Enclave, a pretentious name for a collection of overpriced condos in downtown Seattle, I'm just the quiet guy in Unit 402. I keep to myself. I pay my HOA fees on time, and I drive a truck that has seen better days. It's got a few scratches, a little mud on the tires, and the interior smells faintly of diesel and stale coffee. To the untrained eye, I look like a struggling contractor, or maybe a guy who fixes HVAC systems. And I am fine with that. I like flying under the radar. What my neighbors don't know, what nobody in the building knows, is that I own Titan Recovery and Logistics. We aren't just a towing company. We are the towing company. We have the municipal contracts for the police department, the fire lanes, and about 60% of the private luxury complexes in the city, including, as fate would have it, the Sapphire Enclave. I bought the company 5 years ago, rebranded it, and turned it into a finely tuned machine of parking enforcement. But I don't wear a suit, and I don't drive the company cars. I like the ground level. I like the mechanics of it. But let's talk about the sanctuary. My condo came with one specific perk that I valued above all else. Parking spot 1A. It was the holy grail of parking spots. It was an end spot, meaning it was about 2 feet wider than the others. It was directly next to the elevator bank, covered by the concrete overhang so it never got rained on, and it had a dedicated security camera pointed right at it. After a 14-hour shift managing a fleet of 50 trucks and dealing with screaming people who parked in fire hydrants, pulling into spot 1A was my moment of zen. It was the only easy part of my day. Until she moved in. Let's call her Brenda. You know Brenda. You've seen her. She's the woman who walks into a room and immediately scans it for a manager to berate. She moved into Unit 405, just down the hall from me. The first time I saw her, she was supervising the movers, shouting at a 19-year-old kid because he wasn't carrying her box of live, laugh, love signs with enough reverence. She had the haircut, you know the one, the inverted bob that screams, "I wish to speak to your corporate headquarters." She wore sunglasses indoors. She had a tiny, trembling dog in a purse that cost more than my first car. And of course, she drove a brand new Arctic white Range Rover. It was massive. It was pristine. And it was way too big for her assigned spot, which was Spot 4B, a compact space sandwiched between a concrete pillar and a dumpster. The invasion started on a Tuesday. I remember the day because it was raining that miserable, misty Seattle rain that soaks you to the bone. I pulled into the garage after a particularly brutal day where we had to winch a semi-truck out of a ditch on I-5. All I wanted was a hot shower and a cold beer. I rounded the corner to spot 1A, my sanctuary, and hit the brakes. There it was, the white Range Rover. It wasn't just parked in my spot. It was parked diagonally across my spot. The front right tire was actually over the line into the walkway. It was a masterpiece of entitlement. The license plate frame literally said, "Queen of the Road." You can't make this stuff up. I sat there for a second, the wipers on my Ford slapping back and forth, just staring at the audacity. Now, normally in my line of work, this is an immediate hook and book. I could have made one phone call and had a truck there in 10 minutes. But I live here. I didn't want to start a war on day one. I took a deep breath, parked in the guest overflow lot on the roof, getting soaked in the process, and decided to be the bigger man. I wrote a note, a polite one. "Hi, neighbor. Welcome to the building. I think you might have confused spot 1A with yours. This is a reserved spot for Unit 402. Please don't park here again. Thanks. I tucked it under her wiper blade, careful not to touch the pristine paint, and went inside. I thought that would be the end of it. How wrong I was. The next morning, I walked out to my truck on the roof. The rain had stopped, but my mood darkened instantly. My note was crumpled up and shoved into the gap of my driver's side door handle. It was a message. It wasn't just litter. It was a rejection of my existence. I went down to the garage. The Range Rover was gone. Okay, I thought. Maybe she got the message despite the passive-aggressive trash disposal. 2 days later, I came home early. And there it was again. The white whale. Spot 1A. This time, she hadn't just parked there. She had unloaded groceries and left her shopping cart sitting right in the middle of the adjacent empty spot, blocking 2 spaces for the price of 1. This time, I didn't write a note. I waited. I sat in my truck, idling in the fire lane, I know, waiting for the owner to appear. About 10 minutes later, the elevator dinged. Out walked Brenda. She was wearing a tracksuit that looked like it was made of diamonds and velvet, holding a phone to her ear, screaming at someone about a nail appointment. I rolled down my window. "Excuse me, ma'am?" She didn't even look at me. She just held up a finger, the universal sign for silence peasant, and continued her call. "No, I said gelato, not gelish." "Do you even speak English?" I tapped the horn. A short, sharp blast. She jumped, spun around, and glared at me over the top of her sunglasses. "Excuse me? Do you mind? I am on a call." "I mind that you're in my spot," I said, leaning out. "Spot 1A. I left you a note the other day. You need to move your car." She looked at my truck. Then she looked at her Range Rover. Then she looked back at me with a smirk that could curdle milk. She hung up the phone. "Listen," she said, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness that masks pure venom. "I saw your little note. Here's the situation. My car, it's an investment. It's a luxury vehicle. That spot you have, it's wider. It has the camera. It's safer for my car. Your truck." She gestured vaguely at my F-150. "It's already rustic. It doesn't need the protection. I'm sure you understand. We have to prioritize value." I blinked. The sheer, unadulterated logic of a narcissist. "That's not how deeded parking works," I said slowly. "I own that spot. It's on my mortgage. You need to move." She laughed, a high, tinkling sound. "Oh, honey, don't be petty. I'm sure you can park on the roof. It's better exercise for you anyway. Besides," she leaned in, her eyes narrowing, "I'm on the HOA board. Well, I'm joining the board next month, and I plan to have the parking assignments reevaluated based on vehicle class. So, really, I'm just getting ahead of the curve. Be a good neighbor and let it go." And with that, she turned on her heel and walked back to the elevator, pressing the button repeatedly as if it would make the car arrive faster. I sat there, stunned. Vehicle class. She wanted to reassign property rights based on the Blue Book value of our cars. The dopamine hit my brain, but it wasn't the happy kind. It was the cold, calculating kind. The kind I get right before we execute a complex repossession on a hostile target. She had just declared war. But she had made a fatal error. She assumed that because I drove a truck and wore Carhartt, I was powerless. She assumed that her potential future seat on the HOA board gave her authority. She didn't know that the HOA board doesn't enforce parking. The towing company does. And she didn't know that the contract for the Sapphire Enclave had a very specific clause: immediate removal authority. Most complexes require a 24-hour notice or a board member's signature to tow a resident. But because I negotiated the contract myself with the developer years ago, I put in a clause that said the towing company, me, has the unilateral right to remove any vehicle parked in a reserved spot without authorization, specifically to prevent parking wars. I could have towed her right then, but I didn't. Why? Because revenge is a dish best served with a side of absolute humiliation, and I wanted her to dig the hole a little deeper. I wanted her to feel safe. I parked on the roof again. I let her have the spot for 3 more days. During those 3 days, I did some prep work. I called the property manager, a guy named Steve. Steve and I go way back. He knows I own Titan. "Steve," I said, "Unit 405. Who is she?" "Oh, God," Steve groaned. "Brenda. She's been here a week and she's already filed 6 complaints. One was about the color of the lobby flowers. She says yellow is aggressive. Mike, please tell me you're not calling because of her." "She's stolen my spot," I said. "I'll write her a violation notice immediately," Steve said. "I'll fine her." "No," I said. "Send the notice. But don't make a big deal of it. Let her think she can bully you. I want her to feel comfortable." "Mike," Steve said, a tone of warning in his voice. "What are you going to do?" "I'm just going to do my job, Steve. Just doing my job." Steve sent the email. I know because Brenda printed it out and taped it to my door with a note written in red Sharpie. "Stop harassing me, grow up." That was the tipping point. The micro hook was set. She had escalated from theft to vandalism, taping stuff to my door. And harassment. Friday night arrived. The climax. I came home around 7 p.m. The garage was full. It was raining again, and there she was, spot 1A, but she had upped the ante. She had actually set up 2 orange traffic cones, my traffic cones, which she must have stolen from the back of my truck bed, around her Range Rover to create a buffer zone. I parked my truck directly behind her, not blocking the driving lane, but blocking her in. I turned off the engine, locked the truck, and went upstairs to my apartment. I made a sandwich. I opened a soda. I sat in my living room, which overlooks the garage entrance, and I opened the Titan towing dispatch app on my phone. About an hour later, I heard it, the muffled sound of an engine revving, followed by a long, sustained honk. I walked to the window. Down below, I could see the headlights of the Range Rover reflecting off the garage walls. She was trying to leave, maybe a dinner date, maybe a manager meeting, but she was blocked by my Ford. My phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again and again. Finally, I picked up. "Hello?" a voice shrieked. It was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "Who is this?" I asked calmly. "You know exactly who this is. Move your piece of junk truck right now. I have reservations at the Pink Door in 20 minutes, and you are blocking me in. This is illegal. This is kidnapping." "False imprisonment," I corrected her, "and it applies to people, not cars, and you're in my spot, Brenda." "I don't care. Move it or I am calling the police. I am calling a tow truck." There it was, the golden sentence. I am calling a tow truck. "Go ahead," I said. "Call 1. "You think I won't?" she screamed. "I'm calling the number on the sign right now. You're going to regret this, you blue-collar loser." Click. I stood there, staring at the phone, a smile spreading across my face that would have terrified a shark. She was going to call the number on the sign that says, "Authorized towing by Titan Recovery." I opened my laptop and logged into the dispatch system. I saw the call come in. Caller, Brenda. Location, Sapphire Enclave. Vehicle to be towed, Ford F-15. Oh, black. I watched the call sit in the queue. My dispatcher, Marge, a woman who has smoked 2 packs a day since the Carter administration and takes 0 prisoners, pinged me on the internal chat. "Marge, boss, got a lady screaming at me from your building. Says a truck is blocking her. Want me to send a driver?" "Me. I'll handle the dispatch, Marge. Send Unit 1. Send Tiny." Marge, "LOL. You got it. Sending the Reaper." Unit 1 isn't a normal tow truck. It's a Ford F650 with a twin-line wrecker body. We call it the Kraken. It's designed to pull loaded cement mixers out of ravines. It's overkill for a Range Rover. But that was the point. And Tiny? Tiny is a former defensive lineman who stands 6 feet 7 inches and weighs roughly the same as a vending machine. He's the sweetest guy in the world, actually. Loves cats. But he looks like he eats rocks for breakfast. I waited 5 minutes, then put on my raincoat and headed down to the garage. When I stepped out of the elevator, the scene was chaotic. Brenda was pacing back and forth in her heels, the clicking echoing off the concrete. She was screaming into her phone again, presumably at the police, who I knew wouldn't come for a private property parking dispute, or maybe her lawyer. She saw me and charged. "You!" She pointed a manicured finger at my chest. "You're done, you hear me? Done. The tow truck is on its way. They're going to drag that heap to the scrapyard." "Brenda," I said, leaning against a concrete pillar. "You're parked in a deeded spot. You're the one in violation." "I am the victim here," she screeched. Her face was turning a shade of crimson that usually indicates a stroke. "I have rights. I have a luxury vehicle. You are obstructing my freedom of movement." Just then, the garage shook. The sound of a heavy diesel engine roared down the ramp. The air brakes hissed, psh, like a dragon exhaling. The Kraken had arrived. The yellow strobe lights bounced off the walls, blindingly bright. Tiny navigated the massive truck into the lane with the precision of a surgeon. Brenda let out a triumphant squeal. "Finally, over here! This truck! Take it away!" She waved her arms frantically at my F-150. Tiny climbed out of the cab. He was wearing his high-vis Titan towing vest. He walked slowly, his boots thudding on the ground. He looked at Brenda. Then he looked at me. He gave me the slightest, almost imperceptible nod. "Ma'am," Tiny rumbled. His voice sounds like gravel in a blender. "You called for a tow?" "Yes, him." She pointed at me. "He's blocking me in. Remove him immediately. I want him billed for everything." Tiny looked at the situation. He looked at my truck blocking her. Then he looked at her Range Rover parked in spot 1A. He pulled a clipboard out. "Okay," Tiny said. "I see the problem." He walked past my truck. He walked right up to the front of her Range Rover. He checked the VIN number through the windshield. He checked the tire alignment. "What are you doing?" Brenda asked, her voice faltering slightly. "His truck is behind me." "Yeah," Tiny said, "but his truck is registered to the building, and this spot," he pointed to the 1A painted on the ground, "this is a reserved spot. My system shows this vehicle." He tapped the hood of her Range Rover. "Is unauthorized." "Excuse me?" Brenda laughed, but it sounded nervous. "I called you. I am the customer." "Actually," I spoke up, pushing off the pillar. "You're not the customer, Brenda." She whipped around. "Shut up. What do you know?" "I know the owner of the towing company," I said. "I don't care if you know the owner," she yelled. "I am going to have your job. I am going to sue this company." Tiny sighed. He looked at me. "Boss, you want a drop or a full impound?" The silence that followed was deafening. You could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. Brenda froze. Her head swiveled from Tiny to me and back to Tiny. "Boss," she whispered. I stepped forward. "Brenda, meet Tiny." "Tiny, this is Brenda. She seems to think spot 1A belongs to her because her car is more expensive than mine." "It's a nice car," Tiny admitted. "Gonna be heavy on the hook, though. A WD requires a flatbed or dollies. I'm gonna use the dollies." "Wait," Brenda stammered. Her hand went to her throat. You own the company?" "Titan Recovery," I said. "We hold the exclusive contract for the Sapphire Enclave, and I have a zero-tolerance policy for parking theft." "But I called you," she said, her brain misfiring as it tried to process the information. "I called the number." "And we appreciate the business," I said. "Tiny, hook it up." "No!" She threw herself in front of the Range Rover. "You can't touch my car. This is illegal. I'll call the police." "Go ahead," I said. "We're friends with them too. But right now, you're trespassing on my property and obstructing a tow operator, which is a separate fine." Tiny didn't wait. He moved with practiced speed. He threw the dollies, those little wheels that go under the tires so you can drag a 4x4 without wrecking the transmission, under her rear wheels. Clang, clang. The sound was like church bells to me. Brenda was screaming now. It was a full-lawn tantrum. She was threatening to sue me, to sue Tiny, to sue the building, to sue the ghost of Henry Ford. "Do you know who I am? My husband is a lawyer." "I hope he's a good one," I said calmly, "because you're about to rack up a hefty bill." Tiny hooked the stinger under the front of her car. The hydraulics whined. The front of the pristine white Range Rover lifted into the air. She watched, horrified, as her investment was angled at a steep 45 degrees. "Please!" She switched tactics instantly. The tears started. "Please, I have a dinner reservation. Just let me go. I'll move it, I promise." This is the moment where a lesser man might have caved. The Sherlock reveal was done. The trap was sprung. She was begging. But I remembered the note crumpled in my door handle. I remembered the grow-up written in Sharpie. I remembered vehicle class. "I can't do that, Brenda," I said. "Once the hook is on, it's a billable tow. Company policy. I can't undermine my employees." "How much?" she sobbed. "I'll pay you right now. Drop fee. How much?" I looked at Tiny. "What's the after hours? Holiday weekend, hostile customer, obstruction of justice drop fee, Tiny?" Tiny pretended to consult his clipboard. "With the dollies and the emotional distress to the driver." $500, she shrieked. "Cash," I added, "or we take it to the yard and sow dough. And let me tell you, Brenda, the yard isn't covered. It rains down there, too." She didn't have cash. Of course she didn't. "Take it away, Tiny," I said. Tiny hopped into the Kraken. The air horn blasted one more time, a sound of finality. He dragged her Range Rover out of the spot, down the ramp, and into the rainy night. Brenda stood there in the empty spot, staring at the oil stain on the concrete where her car used to be. She looked at me. I looked at her. "You're a monster," she hissed. "No," I said, walking toward the elevator. "I'm a tow truck driver, and you're in my spot." The fallout was spectacular. She had to Uber to the impound lot the next morning. Since it was a Saturday, the office was technically closed, but we opened for a 2-hour window for retrievals. I made sure I was there, sitting in the back office drinking coffee. She paid the tow fee, $350, the dolly fee, $150, the storage fee, $75 per day, and an administrative processing fee. Total damage, nearly $700. Plus, the Uber. She tried to bring it up at the next HOA meeting. She stood up, clipboard in hand, ready to launch a crusade against the tyrannical parking enforcement. She barely got 2 sentences in before Steve, the property manager, cut her off. "Brenda," Steve said, looking over his glasses, "we've reviewed the security footage. You parked in a deeded spot that belongs to another resident, despite multiple written warnings. And you blocked a fire lane. Be glad Mike didn't have the fire marshal ticket you too. Sit down." The room, full of neighbors who had likely dealt with her in the elevator, actually applauded. She moved out 3 months later. I heard she broke her lease, said the building had toxic energy. I still live in Unit 402. I still drive my beat-up Ford F-150. And every night, when I pull into Spot 1A, I take a second to appreciate the extra width, the camera coverage, and the sweet, sweet silence of a sanctuary defended. Sometimes, when I see a car parked badly in the city, I think of Brenda. I think of the look on her face when Tiny hooked up the dollies. And I smile, because in a world of Karens, sometimes it pays to be the one holding the hook. Don't judge a book by its cover, and for the love of God, don't park in a tow truck driver's spot.